Chapter 1501. As for Yu Sihuang and family none of them would be able to leave the Saint King's tomb. Feng Luan's eyes were extremely gloomy. She instructed the people of the Ouyang clan, just do as I say. She spoke in a low voice as she explained her plan. At this moment, in the room, Luo Qingtong looked at the Hua clan head's violent attack and her eyes turned cold. Bang! She waved an attack in her hand. In an instant, the black sword light swept straight and shattered countless surging spiritual energy vortexes. Chapter 1506. The two attacks collided. It was fine if the Ouyang family head was willing to take a step back, but if Luo Qingtong was they could only join forces with Yu Sihuang and the rest to attack the Ouyang family. In the sky, countless spiritual chi of heaven and earth forces felt colliding with each other and this head would not choose to do so. Luo Qingtong's feet scraped the ground just as they were blasted back by the collision of the two family heads' loud laughter. Ha! Ha! Yi Jiu, you're all laughable. Don't think that you can compete with me just because your strength has increased to the peak of the martial spirit realm and you have the help of a treasure sword. Our family's strength is naturally not enough to do anything to you, but what if we had set our imagination advance? The Saint realm was beyond the Saint looked at the group of family forces in front of him mockingly. Compared to the Saint realm, he had already said that the Ouyang family had set up a trap here. How could a mere people think that just because the Ouyang clan to such a level blocked them and surrounded them, it was already a trap? Looked at Luo Qingtong. If that was the case, he would not have dared to face so many could rely on that long sword not to mention saying such arrogant words to make them with the strength in her body. But how many times could she fight with him? The Ouyang family head sneered when he thought of the situation that he and the rest had learned from Watch me torture you to death to vent the hatred in my heart. Let them see the trap that you've set up. The whole clan head thought so and let them see what kind of confidence the Ouyang family has to dare to say such words to make with the head of the Hua family. She quickly felt that the power of the soul of the Holy King in her body was fusing rapidly with her body with a cold and arrogant expression. If an example had to be used, ever since she found out that Luo Qingtong was being hunted down by the Hua family, she only most likely died without a burial place. She felt exceptionally under the attack of the Hua clan head. Luo Evil Dr. Gui formula to solve the problem this day began to be used officially. It's a pity that you won't die in my hands. Luo Qingtong's strength had increased too quickly. Luo Qingtong was being hunted down from the beginning of the martial ancestor realm. It was impossible for a martial ancestor to survive against a saint. Even if there was no lack of power was as cunning as a fox, it did not mean many tricks up his sleeve. Use it in battle and display her true King's tomb. And now, therefore, the Hua clan head was acting as a sparring partner, helping Luo could not help but chuckle her strength to reach the peak of the martial spirit. She raised her eyes to look at Yu Sihuang and the rest in front of her. Once the tempering was completed, on the peak of the martial spirit realm, the man was evil and cold. The peak of the martial spirit realm, even though he was exuding a murderous aura, Luo Qingtong, it could not hide his devilish charm. For Luo force, this kind of man also liked the evil Dr. Ghost eyes, and even chased after her everywhere to support Luo to himself's face for as Feng Luan thought about Snowball, a trace of uncontrollable jealousy don't blame us for interfering our grudge between you. Into the Imperial Emperor Sect leader, since you brought me good news, I'll give you a Snowball, at that time, who had entered the grave stage who will no longer cry out like a cute cub. Become my male slave and I had a bit of domineering and wild mountain range since the Ouyang family had already extremely loud and clear. The other family forces were no longer afraid of offending. This man who sat on the contrary eyes ended up as a slave at his feet. The Ouyang Snowball's transformation, how would evil have the strength of the saint? To be honest, these people didn't want to fight with the knew about this in the underworld. She would probably be so angry that she would vomit blood. Luo Qingtong was going to snatch everything that the other party full of killing intent. No matter what she licked her lips with her fragrant tongue, whether it was Yu Sihuang evil or Yi Qian charming and alluring, they were all like this. At this moment, evil Dr. Ghost of her temperament I will use facts to tell you that her elegance are inferior to me. Humph. Male slave. The Hua family head looked at her and sneered. Yu Sihuang's long and narrow almond-shaped realm cultivator dared to boast shamelessly. The disdain and even experts who had surpassed the saint concealed even by the enchanting charm of his eyes, not daring to be arrogant. She was not even in the saint realm, yet she dared to be arrogant in front of him. Yu Sihuang's eyes were cold. With this saint realm demonic beast, he had just carefully searched the hall with his divine sense and did not find any trace of the Hua clan. He would naturally accompany her to the play. Were all the Hua clan members really dead? He just didn't know if she could bear it. Wasn't this death a little too clean? The Hua family had thought so and suddenly Yu Sihuang originally wanted to catch a Hua clan member and use his whole body instantly flew up like a vulture spreading its wings and rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the Hua clan head. At the same time, his intuition told him that Luo flashed with a bloody light in trouble, and she also clamped Snowball's waist and abdomen. The young girl's strength and cultivation were immediately compared to the meet the Hua family head. Even if she temporarily relied on the terrain and advantages of the Same King's figures, he was afraid that she would not be able to hold on for long. Luo Qingtong activated her pupil technique, and the Hua family heads attacked to entangle himself with Feng Yuan and the Ouyang clan head. Although it was not enough for her to seize the opponent's flaws and attack, turned around to look at the Snowball family her body and the others will and could cooperate. He said in a deep voice, "Ouyang family head, if I remember correctly, this young lady should be the future young mistress of Luo Qingtong to deal with her current strength. You want me to be her male slave so obviously? Do you think that Ouyang Xiao's green hat is not big enough? In the exit hall, or is it that your Ouyang and the others arranged so good that you don't mind people from other families and forces began to arrive one after another? I don't have that kind of hobby. At the entrance of the Saint King's tomb, there were 12 passages. I think she's dirty, and each passage led to the exit hall. Raised his hand and touched the red mole at the corner of his eye with a smile, which was the one that his action was obviously extremely enchanting and charming, but when he did the most important treasure location with a bit of a chilling aura. Most of the treasures and resources in the Saint King's Sect head cannot be humiliated. The dignity of the king of the southern region that there was nothing in the other passageways. Yu Si Huang's eyes were cold and filled with killing not as many as the things in the passage. Feng Yuan. Not only this woman really did not know were also much more dangerous than the correct tunnel. Did she think that everyone was Luo Qingtong? The most dangerous route was the one that she could freely take liberties with him. Furthermore, there was nothing in that passageway. Was angered by Yu Si Huang's words. If it wasn't for the green smoke, his face was full of arrogance and interest, as well as the all turned into embarrassment. Would have all died here. She was just about to open her mouth to shout. Some of the people from these families and forces were lucky enough to break through the other passages. Don't bring out such a bitch. They were helping each other to enter the exit hall. Yu Si Huang's pair just as they were about to go to the exit array, the smile on his lips by the people of the Ouyang family. However, the words that came out of his mouth became even more impolite. The person who was stopped by the Ouyang family there are no men in the Ouyang looked at the people from the Ouyang family in front of him. Since the other party was so shameless, wouldn't want to use force, he would fulfill her wish. Snatch their harvest. Feng Yuan's face twisted. The Ouyang clan was the number one clan, words, and they had the map was a huge slap to her face in their hands. Bitch, why would they need to rob them? Did he find her dirty? Or could it be that the Ouyang family's people had eaten Feng Yuan's face, but were not even prepared to let them have a sip of the soup? Don't think that you can sit back and relax just because you are the leader of the imperial sect and the king of the southern region. The people from these forces began to group up. Since you insist on going with Wuxia, their strength was not as good as the Ouyang then die with them. Feng Yuan was extremely angry. Chapter 1503. Her face was contorted. If they didn't band together, that face of hers was almost unbearable to look at in a matter of minutes. Everyone in the Ouyang family also suffered heavy losses. Feng Yuan's actions really made them lose face. An injured patriarch of a large clan looked at the place where Patriarch Ouyang and the others were using this title. Patriarch Ouyang family head also had a burst of blood rush by doing this. He fiercely looked at Feng Yuan, the map, then turned to Yu Si Huang and the Saint King's tomb, and angrily said, "Don't tell me you won't even let us have a little bit of soup." So much to them. That's right. Since they are looking for death, Ouyang clan's people fulfill their wish. A group of people from large and small clans family heads' words. We have risked our lives to get a little bit of a sinister expression. But Patriarch Ouyang, you can't even tolerate this. That's too much. 1508. Everyone glared at the Ouyang clan people. They still didn't know the purpose of Patriarch Ouyang. A series of loud noises rang out, only thought that the Ouyang clan the entire hypocritical mask. Suddenly, snake-like they had always thought that the Ouyang clan people were really noble and had found a place like the Saint King's tomb and even shared it with them. Those figures were extremely bloodthirsty and there were many copies of the Saint King's tomb. Their blood-red bodies were extremely even if they didn't almost thicker than the pillars at the exit someone else got the other dozens of people to wrap their arms around. That was why they were so blood-red demonic vines drilled out from the cracks in the walls of the hall and the pillars. They even wanted to take away their little harvest. Those thick and solid bodies stretched and bent over the walls, faintly revealing themselves from the Patriarch Ouyang and the others. It was an abnormally terrifying sight. When Patriarch Ouyang heard the entire exit hall he almost had a brain completely covered by these blood-red demonic vines. If their Ouyang clan really had a harvest, they were like giant snakes and dragons eyeing the people. Did they really think that he wanted to cooperate with? If that was all, it would be fine. Wasn't it because their Ouyang clan didn't get even more was that the aura of these blood-red demonic vines take advantage of them. Powerful and overbearing. Now they were being accused of being greedy and insatiable. Their roots were deeply rooted in this exit hall, and their aura was vaguely the same as it. And they had no way to reason, but the aura in their bodies was also constantly rising. Who would believe it? It gave everyone the feeling that they were absorbing the power in the Saint King's tomb, schemed against and didn't get anything. In fact, if they said it out loud, they would be thought to be lying. These blood-red giant vines were also called blood demonic vines. The head of the Ouyang family were an extremely rare demonic plant. It was given coldly at the people by the family forces in front of him and said coldly, "It was also the main purpose of the latter's visit to the far western wilderness. Before everyone arrives, no one is allowed to leave." The blood demonic vines were fed and irrigated by blood and death aura. The head of the Ouyang blood essence and aura a martial artist had when he didn't have the face to tell her that he and the others had been tricked by the blood essence and aura would eventually fuse and form a blood-red flower in its body. The young man, family inside, and the people of the southern region were all going to die. Many powerhouses. Their belongings would all belong to him. It was enough to help powerhouses below the Saint realm. It didn't matter if he said it or not. If a powerhouse above the Saint realm obtained it, he could break through to the next realm. When they finally left the tomb, other than the dead, there would only be also known as the flower of the Saint realm. No matter how much these people talked, Feng Yuan came to the extreme west desolate region family in order to nurture this blood-colored flower. He felt much better in his heart. She gave the map of the Saint King's tomb to the Ouyang family in order to use the prestige of the Ouyang family to attract people from many family forces to this Saint King's tomb. The other party was their biggest target to absorb their blood essence. These people were of no importance at all. These blood-colored demonic family lived on fresh blood and death full of killing intent. Naturally, everyone were like fish in water in this Saint King's tomb, growing rapidly. Chapter 1504. Feng Yuan's previous plan with a flash of blood-red demonic vines absorbed the blood figures and death chi of many people who came to explore the Saint Monarch's tomb. On his originally devilishly handsome they would torture Luo. The enchanting charm had completely disappeared, leaving behind only the other party die an incomparably miserable death. He strode toward the exit of the hall. Could not keep up with changes. Family Hu and the southern mountain range people followed closely behind him. She tricked them into the wrong channel. Those southern mountain range people, they almost lost their lives there, not to mention didn't dare to breathe loudly. However, although the process of the plan had changed, she always took it as her duty to cheat her brother. And many people from the forces who died in the passage provided enough this time facing Wuxia for the growth of the blood-colored demonic vines. She quickly hugged Dudu, Feng Yuan had ordered the Ouyang clan's people to lay down a spirit array at the entrance of the hall to absorb all the death chi and blood chi. It was too dangerous to stay beside the spirit array was completely set up. Be angered. She wanted none of the people present usually cheated. She liked to insult Wuxia. Those blood-colored demonic vines quickly shot up. And Wuxia didn't have the time and energy to pay attention to her. Chapter 1509. His gaze was cold as he looked at the exit series of blood-curdling screams accompanied by the sound of the blood-colored giant vines flying up into the sky. Those people were brought up into the sky by the blood-colored vines, and then they were suddenly torn into pieces. It was like a slap. Blood and flesh splattered on the skin of the blood-colored head was really good and were absorbed by the huge tubes. Did he really think that his imperial sect's power was in the southern mountain range? And he couldn't do anything on the blood-colored giant vines. If Luo Qingtong lost all the blood and flesh, he would make the western mountain range no longer have nothing behind. This scene caused the faces of the people present to turn pale. His red robe fluttered in the wind. They couldn't help but step back. He appeared in front of the people among the experts who were killed just blocking all the people. There were quite a few experts who had surpassed the Saint realm. Where are the Hua clan people? However, they were killed in an pair of long and narrow phoenix eyes. Before they died, across they only let out a scream. But he didn't see the Hua clan people. How terrifying was this? His face became even colder. The people of the various forces finally understood why the people of the Ouyang enchanting were so arrogant and why Feng Yuan was so unscrupulous. The Hua clan people. She dared to make you the Ouyang clan head and the others didn't know what happened after the Hua clan had left the passage. Her male so when they heard Wuxia ask about the Hua clan people, the Ouyang clan were obviously lost face. When they saw you anything to the others appear, their hearts were filled with joy. But it turned out that this girl named Luan, they thought that the target they didn't pay much attention finally appeared, was the one they really needed to pay attention to. Without waiting for them to attack, she was the one who was truly dangerous in this scheme. His expression was even colder and more severe than theirs. As for
he
Yu
even interrogated
the
her
other
about the
whereabouts
of
of the
the
blood-colored
family.
demonic vines flying
They
up
stared
one
blankly
after another
for a
moment,
their faces
then
were
glanced
very
around and
serious.
discovered that Luo Qingtong
Especially
was not
Yu
in
Sihuang's
His
group.
strength was the strongest
Thinking
among
back
them.
to Yu
Sihuang's question,
naturally,
and the Hua family
he could
head
feel
who
the
escaped
aura of
from
these
the blood-colored vines,
everyone from
and how
the Ouyang
dangerous they
family
were.
immediately understood what
This
happened.
girl named Luan was not simple. The head of the Ouyang
She was
family
definitely
laughed
not
out loud.
just the future wife of the Ouyang clan's
I
young
didn't
master.
expect this. Who are you?
Yi Jiu was also tricked by his own
gaze
design.
was cold as he looked at Feng Luan.
He was
the
in a
latter
good
had
mood.
already stepped on the head of an
Yi Jiu
incomparably
had schemed
thick
against
blood-colored
them,
demonic
but what was the
vine
result?
and rose up into the sky along
Didn't
with
he
the
end up in a
blood-colored
situation
demonic
where he
vine?
didn't even know if he was
Of course,
dead or alive?
it's me.
Being
Feng
targeted
Luan
by
sneered.
Patriarch Hua, she
She
dead
naturally
meat in the
couldn't
Saint
tell Yu
King's
Sihuang
tomb
and the others about her identity at this time. The head of the Ouyang
Otherwise,
family laughed
the
loudly.
identity of the evil Dr.
He
Gui
looked at
Tong
Yu
couldn't be
Sihuang
hidden,
and the others,
right?
his face full of ridicule.
If the people of the Ouyang clan
Imperial
suddenly
Sect
changed
sides
because of the
advise
other
you not to
party's
look for the
identity,
Hua clan
she would have
people.
to spend a lot of trouble.
They were trapped in the passage
Although
with us,
Feng Luan
and
did
now
not
they are
mind
all
killing
dead.
a few more people.
And
After
all of this is
the
because
moment
of
the
Yi
layout
Jiu.
was completed, the
The head
existence
of the Ouyang family's face was gloomy.
However, she still had some things that she needed
Chapter
the Ouyang
15:05.
family to do, so she couldn't kill
I'll
them
take care
all
of
for the
all
time
of you.
being.
But
Therefore,
it
whether
seems
it was
like
her
there's no
identity
need
or
for
the
that.
identity of the evil Dr.
I'm afraid
Gui
she'll
Tong,
end up in a
she had
worse
to
state
hide
in the
it
hands
first.
of the Hua family head than in our
Otherwise,
hands.
new problems would crop up. The Ouyang family head laughed out
Yu
loud.
Sihuang,
Then
I
looked
will give you
coldly
one
at Yu
last
Sihuang
chance.
and the rest. Do you want to submit
As for
to me
all
or
of you,
not? Don't even think about
crawl
leaving
under
this
my
place.
feet.
Become my male
As
slave,
he spoke,
and
his
become an
face
obedient
darkened.
dog under my feet.
He looked at the people
If
from
you're
the other
willing,
families
I
and
can grant you a
forces
favor
said,
and
the
spare you
Ouyang
from
family
death.
has set a trap here today.
This is your last chance.
Those who follow us will
think
prosper
about it
and
carefully.
those who oppose us will perish.
Standing on the blood-colored
Other than
monster
family
vine,
who and the
Feng
people
Luan's
from the southern
posture was
region,
indescribably
if you're willing
aloof
to
and
submit
proud.
to us and swear to heaven
Her
and
eyes
earth
were
that
gloomy
you'll serve
and
the
ruthless,
Ouyang family
coldly
in the future,
looking at Yu
then I'll let
Sihuang
you
and
go.
the others.
Otherwise,
The latter sneered, then
all
raised
of
his
you
head
will
and
die
said,
here.
I said, I'm
The
not
Ouyang
interested
family
in a bitch.
head's face was cold.
Especially someone
At
like
this
you.
time,
Almost everyone in the Saint King's tomb had gathered here.
Chapter
The
15:10.
Ouyang family head and the rest did not
You.
care about the remaining people
Feng
who were
Luan
still in
couldn't
the
hold it
passageway
any
longer. Those who had
Her
not
eyes
come
were
out
red,
at this time
and
were
she was
either
so
not
angry
strong
that
enough
blood
or
was
were
about
on their
to
last
drip out.
breaths. Under such circumstances, even if those
Feng
people
Luan
came
looked
out,
at Yu
they would
Sihuang
not
as
be
if
a
she
threat
was
to
dipped
them.
in poison.
Once they had
She then
subdued
laughed
those who
coldly.
came out,
How could
Imperial
those who
Sect
came out
masters
escape from
indeed
their hands?
infatuated. Since they were going to do it,
as
they
she
had to be
spoke,
ruthless. She compressed her voice into
They
a
wanted
line
the
and
things
sent
in
it
the
into
Saint
Yu
King's
Sihuang's
tomb.
ears. The
Evil
Ouyang
Dr.
family
Gui
wanted
Tong
these people
doesn't
to have
too.
you in his heart. The Ouyang
Just
family
wait
had
to die
sneered,
for her.
his head held high as
The
he
anger
looked at
and
the shocked
Feng
people
Luan's
from
heart
the other
had reached
families.
its peak.
What? Yu Sihuang's determination
Ouyang
reminded
family.
her of Yi Qianxian. The people from the other
That
families
man
and
who
forces
stood at the
thought
peak
that
of the
Supreme
Ouyang
Being
family
in the
was
black
just
field
trying to
could
take
only
advantage
see
of the
evil Dr. Gui
situation
Tong
and
rob them of their gains.
Now,
Yu Sihuang
they did
was
not
the
expect
same.
the Ouyang family
But
head
it
to
didn't
have the
matter.
idea of
After
subduing
today,
them along
evil
with their
Dr.
gains.
Gui Tong would no longer
These people
exist
who
in
came
this
to the
world.
Saint
King's tomb were the
Only
high-ranking
her,
experts
the heavenly
and mainstays
doctor,
of the
would
various
remain.
families and forces in
Yi
the far west
Qianxian would be
wilderness.
hers sooner or later.
Some of these forces
As
were
for
from
Yu
Wildland
Sihuang,
City,
since he
while
wasn't
others
willing
were
to
from
betray
other cities.
evil
Dr. Gui Tong and
Most
become
of them
her
were
male
extremely
slave.
powerful
Then he would
forces
die
in
with
their
these
own
people from
cities.
family who, once they submitted to
Feng
the
Luan
Ouyang
thought
family,
this,
it
she
meant that
instantly
their
raised her
forces would be
hand and made a
completely
gesture.
controlled by the Ouyang family.
In an instant,
those blood-colored
time,
vines that
the
broke
entire
through the
wild
wild
suddenly
city
rushed
and
out
from the
from the
far
surrounding
west
walls
walls
and
would be
pillars,
under the control
rushing
of the
towards
Ouyang
the
family
people
who were surrounded in the
The
center of the
Ouyang
main
clan
hall.
wanted to become the overlord
If you don't
of the
want to
far
die,
west desolate
then swear
region.
your loyalty and kill
The
the
people
people
from
from
the
the
southern
southern
mountain
mountain
range
forces
and
were
family who-
furious. Otherwise,
Ouyang family
die.
head.
As
Your
Feng
Ouyang
Luan's
clan's
voice
ambition
ambition
is
is
too
the people
big.
from the various forces
Be
who were
careful not to
surrounded in the
choke to
main hall
death.
panicked.
That's right.
They looked at the huge vines
Although our
that were
strength
rushing
isn't as
towards
good
them
as your
from all
Ouyang
directions.
families,
You want us to
the
submit
entire
to you
main
and
hall
recognize
was
you
almost
as our
cut
master?
into
Countless webs by
You're
these
too
thick,
naive.
blood-colored bodies. The Ouyang family's
The surrounding
experts snorted
spiritual
coldly.
energy of heaven and earth
That's
vibrated.
The
Ouyang
entire
family
main
head,
hall
was likely trembling because of these thick blood-colored python-like vines. And under the senses of these people, the aura of these vines was still growing. If this continued, they wouldn't have any chance of survival. The people from the various families looked at the exit array that was surrounded by the people from the Ouyang family in despair. Now, a large group of people from the Ouyang clan was also charging towards them under the command of the Ouyang clan master. The sealed Saint King's tomb was surrounded by blood-red vines, and the Ouyang clan's people were eyeing it covetously, waiting for an opportunity to kill. At this moment, the people from the various families were filled with regret. If they had known that the Ouyang clan was capable of capturing them in one fell swoop, they would never have been tempted by the map of the sage monarch's tomb and come here. Right now, there was no one to respond to his cries for help. There was no other choice but to submit and swear allegiance. We are willing to pledge our allegiance. We're willing. When the first person took the lead to say such words, the people from the other families and forces also gave up resisting. One by one, they were unwilling but had no choice but to swear their loyalty. Soon after, they aimed their attacks at Yu Sihuang and the others. In an instant, Yu Sihuang and family whose people became the target of public criticism. Everyone's spearheads were all aimed at them. If the people from the various families didn't want to die, they had to rely on Feng Wuan and kill Yu Sihuang and the others. In the room where the sage monarch's coffin was placed. Boom boom boom. A series of violent explosions suddenly came from the room. Chapter 1511. Swoosh. Luo Qingtong's figure and Snowball's figure missed the Hua family head. She raised the long sword in her hand and felt the fusion and solidification of the strength and comprehension in her body. The smile on her lips became more and more flamboyant. On the other side, the Hua family head's heart was like a raging storm. He originally thought that if he attacked with all his strength, Luo Qingtong would definitely not be able to withstand it. Who would have thought that the young man relied on the long sword in his hand and the Sage Realm demonic beast to contend with him for so long? Clearly, the young man was only at the peak of the martial spirit realm, not even at the Sage Realm, but he repeatedly avoided the strongest part of his attacks. As a result, almost all of his attacks did not land on her body. Every time, some of the aftershocks blasted towards her and were then shattered by her. And, was it his imagination? He kept feeling that the other party's strength seemed to have increased a little. This kind of increase was not in strength, but in quality and comprehension. The other party's use of martial skills and strength seemed to have become more harmonious. Thinking of this, the Hua family head's eyes suddenly darkened. He seemed to have thought of something, and then he became angry. You! He raised his hand and pointed at Luo Qingtong, and shouted angrily, "You used me to practice your moves and consolidate your strength." The Hua family head was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He desperately wanted to kill Luo Qingtong, but the other party used his carelessness to practice her moves and consolidate her strength. As Patriarch Hua thought about it, he felt a sense of shame in his heart. Bastard! You're courting death. The Hua family head was so angry that his whole body was about to explode. With a boom, he shook his sleeves and no longer cared about the loss of strength, and used his strongest move. In an instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the entire room violently surged. A suffocating feeling like the eve of a volcanic eruption enveloped the entire room. Under the influence of the Hua family head's aura, the entire room seemed to be shrouded in a layer of low pressure. As the Hua family head's aura rose, the entire room was buzzing and trembling. Yi Jiu, I won't let you have any chance of survival this time. After repeated failures, the Hua clan head no longer dared to underestimate the slender youth in front of him. However, no matter how powerful he was only at the peak of the martial spirit realm. He'd utilized his full strength and utilized his aura to activate a secret technique at the Saint Realm. He refused to believe that Chen Shi would be able to survive such an attack. The only way to accomplish this was if Luo Qingtong possessed strength comparable to a Saint Realm expert in the martial spirit realm. But how was that possible? Let's not talk about whether Luo Qingtong had such power. Even if she did, it was not her own power. She could not use it. Even if Luo Qingtong had obtained a great opportunity in this room, she would still die in his hands. This time, he would definitely not fail. As the Hua family head thought of this, he suddenly sneered. At this moment, Luo Qingtong had also felt that the power of the martial spirit realm that she was not very familiar with before was gradually familiarized and perfected by her during the confrontation with the Hua family. Seeing that the Hua family head had guessed her purpose just now, she smiled faintly. Her strength had been completely tempered. Even if the Hua family head did not notice, she was ready to stop and send him on his way. After chasing her for so long and suppressing her for so long, the Hua family head must be feeling very good, right? Chapter 15:12. Buzz. Luo Qingtong flipped her left hand, and in an instant, the heart of the 1,000-year soul-luring tree appeared in her palm, which was hidden in the black sleeve of her robe. Streaks of power that belonged to the soul of the Holy King from before entered Luo Qingtong's body. The aura in the girl's body boiled. In this stormy space, it was like a suppressed volcano. It was boiling on the inside, but there was no movement on the outside. But once it erupted, it immediately had the power to burn heaven and earth. I don't know if the man's move can reach the level of perfection with the power of the Holy King. Luo Qingtong's heart was inexplicably filled with anticipation. Yi Qianqian's strength was the strongest she had ever seen in her life. She had never been able to find out the bottom of his strength. Because of the matter of the heavenly pulse body, the man had always been secretive about his matters outside the domain. Luo Qingtong also didn't like to delve into it. Anyway, when her strength reached a certain level in the future, even if Yi Qianqian didn't say anything, she would know. Why bother to ask at this time? Clang! The death blade transformed from the life and death sword in Luo Qingtong's hand suddenly jumped under the stimulation of the power of the Holy King that Luo Qingtong had injected into her body. A faintly discernible black figure of death appeared from the death blade in Luo Qingtong's hand. This is... Luo Qingtong looked at the faintly discernible black figure that appeared and was suddenly stunned. At this moment, the Hua family head launched his attack. 1,000 Mountain Spiritual Qi Cut. Following the Hua family head's shout. In an instant, all the spiritual qi in the entire room was transformed into a huge spiritual qi sword with a wave of his hand. Before he raised his hand or raised his foot, he directly took away all the control of the spiritual qi. In a sense, the holy realm was considered to have touched the threshold of the heavenly way. Boom boom boom. The huge sword slashed towards Luo Qingtong from the front. Wherever it passed, the decorations in the room, which had not been damaged in the previous confrontation between Luo Qingtong and the Hua family head, all made cracking sounds. Small cracks appeared on the outside. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold. The blood-red light in her eyes flickered violently. Under such circumstances, the Hua family head's attack, the spiritual energy data, attack speed, and other aspects were all displayed in Luo Qingtong's eyes. In an instant, Luo Qingtong's eyes locked onto the point of attack in front of her. With her previous strength, even Snowball's strength, she wouldn't have been able to break it open. But now, Luo Qingtong fiercely grasped the 1,000-year soul-guiding wood's tree heart in her left hand, and then swung the death blade in her right hand. Heaven-conquering art, seize heaven's fortune. As Luo Qingtong's sword slashed out. In an instant, the whole room seemed to have been split open by Pangu. The powerful spiritual qi pressure that surged in the entire room was completely cleaved apart. A bright and dazzling sword light seemed to have come from the vast starry sky and also seemed to have come from the indescribable end of time. It broke through the oppressive spiritual energy and then flew towards the huge spiritual sword that was flying towards Luo Qingtong. Boom boom boom. Chapter 15:13. At the same time, Patriarch Hua's sneer and ferocious expression froze. How is this possible? He saw that Luo Qingtong's sword light had blocked his attack. This was different from the attack he had used against Luo Qingtong before. This spiritual sword had gathered all his strength and was activated by a secret method. Its actual attack power was above that of an ordinary saint's attack. Luo Qingtong was only at the peak of the martial spirit realm. How could she have enough strength to fight against it and release such a powerful and terrifying attack? What was going on? Patriarch Hua's expression froze. What shocked him even more was yet to come. After the sword light blocked his sword light, it fiercely pressed down. With a bang, his spirit energy giant sword was knocked away by Luo Qingtong's sword light. It was knocked away. Patriarch Hua looked at all this with a shocked expression. He almost couldn't believe his eyes. This was impossible. This was definitely a dream. How could a martial spirit realm warrior be able to withstand his attack? Furthermore, he had even broken through it. Patriarch Hua was unwilling to believe this fact. However, the piercingly cold sword light that assaulted him caused all the hairs on his body to stand on end. Terrifying, too terrifying. That Yi Jiu on the other side was simply a monster. Patriarch Hua had never seen such a monster like him. No, run. Run. The strong sense of crisis from the Saint realm surged violently at this moment. Patriarch Hua suddenly let out a strange cry. He waved his sleeve and turned to escape. The lofty aspirations of wanting to kill Luo Qingtong had now turned into panic and embarrassment. After the sword light broke the spiritual sword that Patriarch Hua had shot out, its power was greatly reduced. With a flick of the sleeve of the Hua clan's patriarch, it was immediately shattered by the violent energy contained within. However, just when Patriarch Hua thought that he could successfully escape, another powerful and domineering sword light suddenly caught up with him and chased after the broken sword light. In an instant, the Hua family's patriarch was hit by the first beam of sword light, which had shattered into pieces. It turned out that Luo Qingtong had once again swung her sword in that sword light. The same biting cold and powerful sword light killed Patriarch Hua in an instant. Bang! Patriarch Hua's body fell heavily to the ground. Until the moment of his death, he didn't know how Luo Qingtong had released such a powerful and terrifying attack. He had broken through his attack, even his saint-level defense, and killed him. Buzz! Luo Qingtong's figure floated in the air. The young man's black figure was in this space where the wind and clouds surged and light shattered. Luo Qingtong's eyes drooped slightly. She looked indifferently at Patriarch Hua's body falling to the ground. Then, she suddenly raised her hand and waved her sword. Boom boom boom. Sword light that was not weaker than the one that had just killed Patriarch Hua shot out from the death blade in her hand. She waved it towards the surrounding walls and pillars. Luo Qingtong wanted to break the defense of this room and make the special boundary power in the Saint King's tomb ineffective. If it was her previous self, she would naturally be helpless. Chapter 15-14. Luo Qingtong didn't need to completely destroy this room. She only needed to break a few key points, and she could make the special barrier that shrouded this Saint King's tomb lose its effect. That spirit formation power should have been specially set up by the Holy King's soul to seal his corpse. Now, it was completely destroyed by Luo Qingtong. Boom boom boom. As Luo Qingtong's sword slashed out, the sealing power in this room quickly weakened. Let's go. Let's go to the exit hall. It's time to go there and get the so-called secret map of the fallen immortal land. At the same time, meet up with Yu Xihuang and the others. Lest they don't know what happened to me and worry for nothing. Luo Qingtong raised her hand to summon the little snowball that had shrunk. With a leap, she headed towards the exit of the palace. In the exit hall, when Yu Xihuang heard Feng Wuwan's words, his face suddenly changed. How did he know Luo Qingtong's identity as the evil Dr. Ghost Eye? What else did he know? Yu Xihuang's pair of evil eyes stared at Feng Wuwan. The latter had already made his move and didn't give him a chance to ask. Boom boom boom. Those blood-red vines violently attacked, and those people from the Ouyang clan and the surrounding clans all pointed their spears at them. A group of people rushed over, and Yu Xihuang's eyes were cold to the extreme. Bang! The energy around his body exploded. In an instant, his body was like a dragon. With a boom, his whole body rushed out like a storm and faced those blood-red vines. Boom boom boom. In an instant, his figure disappeared in the encirclement of the vines. Hu Zhongtian, Hu Fei, and the people from the southern mountain range also formed their own formations at this time. They fought back to back with each other, resisting the attacks from the Ouyang clan and the other clans. The people from the southern mountain range were more powerful. After all, they were the alliance of various sects in the southern mountain range. Every sect that had established a force in the western wasteland had at least one expert who had surpassed the sage realm to keep watch over it. Although they weren't as strong as Yu Sihuang, they were still barely able to resist those powerhouses from Wild City. However, the family whose side was slightly inferior. After all, Hu Zhongtian and Hu Fei had just recovered from a serious illness, and Hu Fei had been bedridden for more than 10 years. Although his strength had the help of Luo Qingtong and absorbed by Feng's power, it was still difficult for him to advance to the Saint Realm. They had indeed gained a lot from coming to the Saint King's tomb this time, but as soon as they reached the exit hall, they were ambushed by Feng Yuan and the Ouyang family. Even if there were gains, there wouldn't be enough time to upgrade them. Now, they were at a disadvantage against the people from the major families. Fortunately, Su Yu and the others resisted. The people from the Heavenly Diabolism who came to the Wild City with Luo Qingtong had received a lot of resources from the Voodoo Sect and the Bai clan. They were completely different from when they first came to the Wild City. Not to mention, Su Yu had also contracted with the Thunder Beast with Luo Qingtong's help. The Thunder Beast was in a special period where it had gained intelligence and advanced to the Saint Realm. Luo Qingtong had eaten the purple heart-clear jade fruit. Chapter 15:15. This included the development of spiritual intelligence for this Thunder Beast. Now, this Thunder Beast had advanced to the Saint stage after being fed with a large amount of resources. Its strength was even more powerful and violent than before. Boom, boom, boom. Under Su Yu's control, its tower-like body rampaged through the attacks of the various family forces. Its violent strength and huge body provided family Hu and Su Yu with the greatest protection. A Saint Beast? Or a Thunder Beast? Seeing the lightning beast in front of them, the people from the various forces were all stunned. Even the Ouyang family members were stunned. Thunder Beast? Is there someone on family Hu's side a beast tamer? With this thought in mind, the crowd immediately looked at Su Yu and the others. Then, they were shocked to find that these people did not seem to be from family Hu. Why were they on family Hu's side helping them? Were they not afraid of death? Family Hu's people were the target of public criticism. While the crowd was thinking this, Su Yu had already ordered the Heavenly Diabolism's people with a cold expression. Everyone, step forward. The Heavenly Diabolism's people obeyed the order and took a step forward in unison. Then, they took down the bags behind their backs. Including family Hu's people, the various forces looked at the Heavenly Diabolism's people in a daze. They did not know what they were going to do. Only Hu Yannyang, who knew a little about the inside story, knew what Su Yu and the others were going to do. They were probably going to use the things that their master had given them. As expected, they lifted their hands and opened the bag. In an instant, the scattered parts inside were assembled together. After a few breaths, the crowd saw something that looked like a long spear in their hands. However, there was no sharp blade. There was only a black hole that looked like a pipe. What are these things? The group of forces who were fighting family Hu's people and the Thunder Beast were stunned when they saw the things that Su Yu and the others took out. What kind of weapon was this? Why did it look so strange? There was no blade? Humph. I think these people are just deliberately mystifying things. This thing doesn't even have a blade, how can it hurt people? I don't even know where he found the fire stick. He purposely made it look so weird. An expert from the Ouyang family snorted coldly. However, just as he finished speaking, Su Yu's cold and murderous voice suddenly rang out. Release! As Su Yu's voice rang out, bang! 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 The Heavenly Diabolism's members had already aimed and fired. In an instant, the long spears in their hands shot out spiritual energy bullets. In an instant, they flew towards the people in front of them like a rain of locusts. What? Seeing the spiritual energy bullets flying towards them like rain, the people from the various forces and the Ouyang family were stunned. Was this thing really a weapon? Furthermore, the power and speed of these things that were shot out were not small either. It was no exaggeration to say that each of these spiritual chi bullets was equivalent to an attack from heavenly diabolism. If these attacks were launched individually, they would not be harmful to the experts from the various forces. They could disperse them in an instant. Chapter 15-16. There was a saying that a large number of ants could bite an elephant to death. Although the strength of heavenly diabolism and the rest was nothing to the experts of the forces who came to the Sage King's tomb, with such a concentrated attack, even if they were strong, they had to be wary. D***, what the hell is this? The experts of the various forces hurriedly dodged. However, the speed of the spiritual energy bullets was too fast, and they did not even take the long spears in the hands of heavenly diabolism and the rest seriously. It was too late for them to dodge at the last minute. Ah! Many of the people from the various forces screamed in agony. It didn't matter to some of the powerful experts. However, the disciples below the sage realm were all in big trouble. One by one, they screamed in agony as they were shot full of holes by the spiritual energy bullets of heavenly diabolism and the rest. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. D***. Many of the weaker sage realm experts were also injured by the spiritual energy bullets. What kind of strange weapon is this? Quick! Don't let them shoot any more. The experts of the various forces and the people of Ouyang family suddenly felt that something was wrong. The elite disciples that their families brought here for training were equally important. However, the strange weapons in the hands of heavenly diabolism and the rest were too powerful. Their attacks were not very strong, but they were able to shoot out countless bullets in an instant. Under such an attack, all the disciples below the sage realm that their family forces brought here would be killed, wouldn't they? The crowd no longer cared about the people of the southern region and rushed towards Su Yu and the rest like a swarm of bees. Seeing this scene, everyone in the Hu clan came to their senses. Quick! Protect them. Don't let them get hurt. A group of Hu clan's people suddenly surrounded Su Yu and others in the middle. They could also see that the guns in the hands of Su Yu and the rest were very powerful. Although they could not cause much harm to the experts, they were enough to make them wary and had no choice but to retreat to protect their elite disciples. In this way, the pressure on their side was greatly reduced. The people of family who thought so and immediately protected Su Yu and the rest with all their might. When the people from the southern region saw this scene, they immediately came over. They were in the same boat as family Hu, Su Yu, and the others. If the latter and the others were in trouble, they would not be able to escape either. Naturally, they would spare no effort. The crowd immediately surrounded Su Yu and the others tightly. There were so many forces outside, plus the Ouyang clan's people, but they couldn't break through their defense line. Seeing that Su Yu and the others were cooperating more and more smoothly with the southern region and family Hu people, the various family powers and Ouyang family members were so angry that they gritted their teeth. There were so many of them, but they couldn't do anything to the people from the southern region and family Hu. If news of this got out, people would laugh their heads off. However, they didn't expect Su Yu and the others to have such a strange method. Where did the other party learn these weapons and attacks from? If they had known that they had such means, they would have killed them long ago. Just as the people from the various forces and Ouyang family members were so angry that they were gritting their teeth, with a rumbling sound, a violent vibration was heard, and in an instant, the Hu clan and the people of the southern mountain range immediately let out cries of surprise and screams. Chapter 15-17. Huge and thick vines burrowed out from the ground of the grand hall like dragons and snakes. In an instant, they wrapped around a large group of people and rushed into the sky. A bunch of trash. Feng Yuan stood on top of a blood-colored vine. He stood high up and looked coldly in the direction where Yi Shiwen was. These people were all a bunch of trash. So many people against family whose people and the group from the southern mountain range, but they still couldn't do anything to them. Fortunately, she had absorbed some death aura and blood essence and cultivated some more vines. Otherwise, she wouldn't even know how she had failed by relying on these people. Feng Yuan's gaze was extremely cold. Her gaze swept across the people who had been tied up by the vines she had sprouted and pulled into the sky. Among them were Hu Yinyang, Hu Zhongtian, Chu Lingfeng, and the others. Mother. Chu Lingfeng hugged Hu Yinyang tightly and used his body to resist the binding and tightening of the vines. Hu Yinyang didn't have any power. If these vines used a little strength, she might be cut into 2 pieces. Seeing the painful expression on Hu Yinyang's face and the cold sweat on her forehead, Chu Lingfeng was anxious. He shouted at Feng Yuan, "You evil woman, come at me if you dare. I will never betray my master. You're not even fit to carry my master's shoes." Although Chu Lingfeng wasn't very bright, he relied on his beast-like intuition and keenly realized that Feng Yuan had a strong sense of hostility towards Luo Qingtong. If he said that, she would definitely target him. Then, Mother and the others would be safe. As expected, Feng Yuan, who had raised her hand to order the vines to tear Hu Zhongtian and the others apart, stopped her actions and looked at Chu Lingfeng maliciously. "Master? Yi Zhou? I didn't expect you to be her dog. No wonder she was so concerned about family Hu." Feng Yuan sneered at Chu Lingfeng. She had checked family Hu's information in the Ouyang family and naturally knew Chu Lingfeng's identity. She also knew that he was the one who brought Luo Qingtong to family Hu. Originally, they were still guessing what the relationship between them was. Now, the truth was revealed. He was a dog under evil Dr. Ghost Eye. He even dared to say that she wasn't even fit to carry her shoes. Feng Yuan hated it when people said that she wasn't as good as Luo Qingtong. Ever since she lost to Luo Qingtong in terms of medical skills, ability, scheming, she hated it when people said that she wasn't as good as evil Dr. Ghost Eye. The other party's dog was really courting death. "Since you're so loyal, I'll help you." As Feng Yuan spoke, she waved her hand fiercely. In an instant, the thin branches and thorns of the vines pierced through Chu Lingfeng's body. The vines were as thick as pythons and the thin branches and thorns on their bodies were unusually sharp. After those thorns pierced through Chu Lingfeng's body, large amounts of blood splattered out. Chu Lingfeng's body was almost pierced into a hedgehog and a sieve by those thin branches and thorns. Seeing this scene, Hu Yinyang, Hu Zhongtian, and the others all had red eyes. Chu Lingfeng, Su Yu and the others, who were lucky enough to escape, also had red eyes. Especially Su Yu. She was going to suffer just now. One of the vines had purposely moved towards her. Chu Lingfeng had pushed her away. Seeing that he was being tortured, her eyes immediately turned red and she wanted to rush up. Chapter 15-18. Seeing that he was being tortured, his eyes turned red and he was about to rush forward. However, he was held back by the people from the heavenly diabolism. "No. Deputy leader, you can't go." The people from the heavenly diabolism were in great pain. Many of them came from the Black Fields mansion and were on good terms with Chu Lingfeng. In addition, they had been by Luo Qingtong's side for a long time. Even those who were not familiar with Chu Lingfeng knew that he was loyal to Luo Qingtong. Seeing that he was being tortured by Feng Yuan, they clenched their teeth tightly. But at this moment, Feng Yuan's strength was really too strong. The vines that were under her control were constantly increasing in strength. She had become the one who controlled everything here. If Suyu rushed up rashly, she would only be caught in the hands of the other party. By then, the heavenly diabolism would become a pile of loose sand. Humph. Don't be too anxious. Soon, it will be your turn. Feng Yuan's attention was attracted by the commotion over at Su Yu's side. He turned to look at them and sneered. These people were so loyal to family Hu. Were they secretly arranged by evil Dr. Ghost Eye in Wild City? The other party really had good intentions and a good plan. On the surface, family Hu was attracting the attention of many forces in Wild City. In the dark, they had cultivated such a strange and powerful force. Once the Hu clan took over the Hua clan's businesses and cultivated their own resources, coupled with this strange force, how many forces in Wildland City would be able to resist them if they suddenly launched an attack in the future? By then, the name of evil Dr. Ghost Eye would be famous in the Western Wilderness. However, it was different from before. If Luo Qingtong became famous this time, she would definitely be in charge of the Western Wilderness and become the leader of the Western Wilderness. This was one of the reasons why Feng Yuan went to the Western Wilderness this time. However, Luo Qingtong's strategy was open and aboveboard. She wanted to develop her influence. On the other hand, her strategy was to scheme. However, all of them wanted to become the master of the far west desolate region. However, in the end, he was slightly better. Evil Dr. Ghost Eye was dead. In the future, the only thing that would spread in the Western Wilderness would be his name. Feng Yuan's smile was cold. He looked at Su Yu and the others, who were full of hatred, and waved his hand fiercely. Suddenly, those blood-red vines, which were glaring at them covetously, rushed towards Su Yu and the others with a loud bang. Feng Yuan wanted to torture them one by one. It made evil Dr. Gui Tong feel extremely pained when he died underground. This way, he could reduce the hatred in his heart. Boom boom boom. The heavenly die abolished the leader to evil Dr. Ghost by the Hua's side of the Huawei evil doctor. The people of the southern mountain range and family who were scattered by Feng Yuan's attack just now. They couldn't gather together and couldn't protect Su Yu and the others. Looking at the scene of these blood-red giant vines attacking Su Yu and the others, in an instant, many people's hearts were filled with extreme despair. Once Su Yu and the others were all caught or killed by the heavenly diabolical vines, they would really have no chance of survival under the attack of Feng Yuan and the others. After all, without the support of Su Yu and the others' strange weapons, the Ouyang family and the other family forces would immediately recover and attack them together with the heavenly diabolical vines. At that time, they would really be dead. Was there really no chance at all? Chapter 15-19. Buzz. A ray of white light suddenly shone from the entrance of the main hall. That was a sign that someone had come out from the other passageways. But no one looked in that direction. At this time, it didn't matter who came out from the other passageways. In any case, they would either submit to Feng Yuan or be killed by them. Ouyang family head and the others didn't even look in that direction. They were just a few fish that had escaped the net. There was nothing to be concerned about. The most important thing was family Hu and the people from the southern region in front of them. As for the people from the other forces who had stumbled out of the passageways, they could keep them alive if they were happy, or kill them if they were unhappy. As the crowd thought this, their eyes were fixed on the blood-colored vines that were attacking Su Yu and the others. 10 meters. 8 meters, 7 meters. 5 meters, boom. The vines had already attacked Su Yu and the others. The top of the vines was like the head of a giant python, and they instantly strangled Su Yu and the others. Just at this moment, bang! a violent rumble rang out. In an instant, countless blood-colored vines flew out like exploding flesh and blood, drifting in all directions like rain. The shrill sound in the air was sharp and long, and it almost resounded through the entire main hall. The crowd looked in shock at the blood-colored vines that were rushing towards Su Yu and the others. They screamed and fell, bursting like rain. However, a figure suddenly appeared amidst this bloody scene. He had snow-white hair, reddish-golden eyes, and a huge body that didn't lose its noble temperament. The black-haired young man in black sat upright on it, and his eyes were as cold as ice. But the anger that was revealed in his eyes was boiling like fire. "Feng Luan, how dare you touch my people?" Luo Qingtong rode on Snowball, holding a sword in one hand and pointing the tip of the sword at Feng Luan, who was stepping on the blood-colored vines. "Master!" Seeing Luo Qingtong appear, Su Yu and the others instantly burst into tears. "Master, are you okay?" Everyone was both surprised and delighted. Previously, when they knew that Luo Qingtong was being chased by Hu clan's patriarch and separated from Yu Sihuang, Su Yu and the others felt as if the sky had collapsed. If it weren't for the miracles created by Luo Qingtong supporting them and convincing them that Luo Qingtong would be fine, they would have died with Luo Qingtong. Now that he saw Luo Qingtong, he was both pleasantly surprised and deeply moved. "Yeah, I'm fine." Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. Her gaze swept over the place where Chu Lingfeng and the others were. In the previous wave of attacks, Luo Qingtong's blood-colored vines had almost been cut to pieces. Even the vines that bound Chu Lingfeng and the others were no exception. Without the binding, Chu Lingfeng and the others fell to the ground. Yan Yang broke away from the vines on her body and ran to Chu Lingfeng's side. "Feng Er." While crying, she wanted to pull the vines that bound Chu Lingfeng's body. But those vines almost penetrated Chu Lingfeng's whole body. Just a light touch, the latter's body twitched violently in pain. In an instant, Hu Yannyang didn't dare to touch him again. "Master," she looked at Luo Qingtong with tears in her eyes. The latter's gaze swept over Chu Lingfeng. Chapter 15-20. Chu Lingfeng's flesh, blood, and bones were all torn apart by the vines that pierced into his body. If it weren't for Feng Luan deliberately avoiding Chu Lingfeng's vital organs in order to torture him better, he would have struggled to die in incomparable pain. She feared that Chu Lingfeng would have long since stopped breathing. Even so, Chu Lingfeng's injuries were so serious that he was on the verge of death. Even with his powerful regenerative abilities, he was still tormented to this point by Feng Luan. It could be seen just how heavy the latter's attacks were. In an instant, Luo Qingtong's eyes burst out with killing intent. "Feng Luan, you're courting death." Luo Qingtong fiercely slapped Snowball beneath her. The latter understood and instantly jumped up, attacking Feng Luan, who was standing on top of a blood-red demonic vine. "Humph! Evil Dr. Ghost Eye, I didn't think you would still be alive." Feng Luan's eyes were cold. After being exposed by Luo Qingtong, she no longer concealed her identity as Luo Qingtong. She actually knew her identity. Then, during the Sage Monarch's Tomb Convention, she already knew that she was deliberately targeting her. No wonder she was so unforgiving and insisted on apologizing in front of everyone. Her pride and arrogance had been completely trampled to the bottom of the mud. It turned out that she already knew her identity. So she guessed that she would target her at the Sage Monarch's Tomb Convention, so she deliberately beat her at her own game? As Feng Luan thought this, she instantly clenched her teeth so hard that they were about to break. Her actions at the Sage Monarch's Tomb Convention were the greatest disgrace of her life. She had been noble all her life. Before she met Luo Qingtong, her life had always been smooth sailing. However, Luo Qingtong had suddenly risen, and the name of evil Dr. Ghost Eye had spread throughout the Sky Spill continent. Her reputation had been surpassed by the other party. Not only that, but the other party had repeatedly thwarted her. The men she fancied only had eyes for each other. Every time she wanted something, her plans would be ruined by the other party. Evil Dr. Gui Tong, I already exist in this world, so why do you still exist? Damn you! Feng Luan looked at Luo Qingtong with jealousy and hatred. Then, he suddenly sneered and waved his hand. In an instant, the blood-colored vines that had been chopped up by Luo Qingtong once again gathered together and rose up like dragons and pythons. Good! Evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Feng Luan stood on the blood-colored vine with his head held high. His gaze was cold as he looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong. Since you're not dead, then die in my hands. This Saint King's tomb is the best place for you to be buried. Feng Luan sneered. Luo Qingtong came at the right time. Previously, he regretted not being able to kill her with his own hands. Unexpectedly, she was lucky enough to escape the Hua clan's patriarch's pursuit. However, this was as far as she went. Under his arrangements, she would die. In this sealed tomb, even if Luo Qingtong died, Yi Qianxian would not know. When he went out, he would have a chance to obtain that man. Luo Qingtong and the people around her should wait to be buried in the ground with the Saint King's tomb forever. With a wave of Feng Luan's hand, the blood-colored vines that had gathered together suddenly slithered like dragons and snakes. With an extremely fast speed and an extremely powerful killing intent, they rushed towards Luo Qingtong. Looking at the blood-colored vines that were rushing towards her like dragons and pythons, Luo Qingtong's eyes were ice cold. Chapter 1521. The corners of her lips twitched. She raised her hand and swung her sword. Boom! Following Luo Qingtong's movements, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the entire exit hall instantly became violent. In Luo Qingtong's left hand, the power from the Holy King's soul continuously poured into Luo Qingtong's body. Then, through the meridians in her body, it violently poured into the life and death duality sword in her body. In an instant, there was a violent explosion. A beam of majestic sword light swept out in an instant. It seemed to carry the momentum of severing heaven and earth and seizing creation as it violently blasted toward the shrieking blood-colored demonic vines ahead. Bang, bang, bang. The sword light in Luo Qingtong's hand swept out. In an instant, the blood-colored demonic vines were shattered again, just like how they were shattered by Luo Qingtong before. However, this time, they could no longer reunite like before. This was because Luo Qingtong had cut off the most important main meridian in their bodies and left a streak of life blade qi in it, hindering them from continuing to absorb the death qi. Without the support of the death qi, these blood-colored demonic vines withered in an instant. Luo Qingtong's blood eyes immediately discovered the location of their lifeline. Others didn't know how these blood-colored demonic vines grew, but in Luo Qingtong's blood eyes, everything was exposed. Bang, bang, bang. The blood-colored giant vines withered and fell to the ground, and Feng Luan's figure was also shaken back step by the terrible force of the collision between Luo Qingtong's attack and the blood-colored giant vines. If it weren't for the main root of the blood-colored giant vine beneath her reducing most of its power, she would have been shaken off by the terrible force and aura. This is impossible. Feeling the terrible force of Luo Qingtong's slash, Feng Luan's face instantly distorted. How was this possible? How did the other party's strength increase so much in such a short time? The power of the blood-red vines came from absorbing the death qi and blood essence in the tomb. The power of the vines had already surpassed the Saint Realm and reached the Saint Realm or even the Sage Master Realm. Under such circumstances, how could evil Dr. Ghost Eye possibly shatter their attacks, break through their defenses, and destroy them so that they could not reassemble and revive? Feng Luan felt like he was going crazy. The gap between Luo Qingtong and her wasn't that big in the past. In other words, she used to be the one looking down on Luo Qingtong from above. Even if the other party's medical skills were far superior to hers, and she had the favor of the Black Field's Ming Zun, Feng Wuan still felt that the evil Dr. Ghost Eye was inferior to her. The strength displayed by Luo Qingtong was a huge blow to her. How could the other party's strength suddenly become so strong? What the hell is going on? Feng Wuan couldn't believe it at all. When Luo Qingtong first appeared, she thought that the other party was lucky to escape from the Hua family head's pursuit. As for the fact that Luo Qingtong cut her vines, she thought that she used some special method. For this reason, she specially strengthened her control of the blood-red vines. However, Feng Wuan didn't expect that Luo Qingtong relied entirely on her own strength. How could she be so strong? How could she be so strong? Feng Wuan's heart was full of disbelief. At this moment, boom! Chapter 1522. Then, with a bang sound, in front of Feng Wuan, at the place where Yu Sihuang's figure disappeared, a huge ball of wriggling vines suddenly exploded. The branches and tendrils scattered about chaotically like rain. Like a giant dragon python, the huge blood-colored vines burst out and flew to the sky. At the same time, a crimson figure suddenly shot out from the web of blood-colored vines in the sky. With a schwa sound, Yu Sihuang's figure flew quickly and landed in front of Luo Qingtong, Su Yu, and the others. Tong! Little Jiu, Seeing Luo Qingtong's figure, Yu Sihuang's eyes suddenly lit up. That pair of bewitching eyes swept past Luo Qingtong, and then he suddenly smiled. "I knew you would be fine," Yu Sihuang said, and raised his hand to touch the tear mole under his eye. His face was indescribably evil and lazy, as if he had never worried about Luo Qingtong's safety. He had always been so wise. However, that moment of relaxation and relief in his eyes did not escape Luo Qingtong's eyes. She looked at him and smiled slightly. "Thank you." This time, if Yu Sihuang was not here, the consequences would be unimaginable. Not to mention other things, if Yu Sihuang was not here, with the strength of these vines, even without the cooperation of the Ouyang family, Feng Wuan could easily kill and tear Su Yu and the others to shreds. Not to mention that the other side also had a group of family forces. If it was not for Yu Sihuang and the people of the southern mountain range, Su Yu, Tian Xie's people, and family whose people, they would all be dead before she arrived. Luo Qingtong sincerely thanked Yu Sihuang. Although she had saved his life before, but along the way, Yu Sihuang had almost completely repaid the favor of saving his life. This time, it was her turn to owe him a favor. It's useless to say thanks. Yu Sihuang's charming eyes looked at Luo Qingtong. Suddenly he smiled and said with an evil charm, "Use action to show that I welcome you." As he spoke, he raised his hand to cover the wound under his red robe, and put his hand behind his back. Yu Sihuang had just attracted all of Feng Wuan's vines. Those vines weren't as new as the ones that Feng Wuan summoned later on. The vines that Yu Sihuang faced had already absorbed a lot of death qi and blood essence, and had grown very strong. The vines were all attracted to him. Only then did family Hu and the people of the southern region have a chance to catch their breath. Otherwise, Su Yu and the rest of the people from the Ouyang clan and the other clans and forces who had turned against them at the last minute, in addition to the vines, would have killed them all in one move. However, because all the vines were attracted to him, Yu Sihuang was unavoidably injured. In the end, he was only one person, and these vines had absorbed the death qi and blood essence of the Saint King's tomb. The more they fought, the stronger they became. This was their home ground. Even if Yu Sihuang's strength was rare, he still suffered a little under their hands. However, he didn't want Luo Qingtong to know about this. What was there to say when he was injured? Win sympathy? If it was before, Yu Sihuang would definitely do this. If he could win a little sympathy, then he would win a little sympathy. What if Luo Qingtong was soft-hearted and really let him take advantage of her? But now, he wasn't willing. The most important thing was, if it was Yi Qianxian, that guy would definitely not be injured. This was troublesome. How could Yu Sihuang let Luo Qingtong know that he was inferior to Yi Qianxian? Even if it was the truth, he still couldn't. The feeling of losing to a love rival was not good at all. Yu Sihuang snorted coldly, and hid the wound on his hand tightly. Chapter 1523. Around Feng Wuan's body, blood-colored vines that looked like giant pythons swam around him. The body and color of these vines were far larger and deeper than the ones that Luo Qingtong and Yu Sihuang had killed. Not only that, but the aura that they exuded was constantly increasing. The vast power that they exuded was becoming more and more powerful. In the battle just now, Luo Qingtong and the others, as well as the Ouyang family and other family forces, had suffered many casualties. The death aura and blood essence of these people were all absorbed by these blood-colored giant vines. This allowed them to grow stronger and stronger. This was the terrifying aspect of these blood-colored giant vines in this Saint King's tomb. It was also the reason why Feng Wuan would rather take out the map of the Saint King's tomb to the Ouyang family and set up an ambush here. It was better to set up an ambush here than anywhere else. A completely enclosed space, enough people, and the sage monarch's tomb had the advantage of being in the right place. In short, this was the place where these blood-colored giant vines grew the fastest. After a while, several vines broke through again and promoted to the level of Saint Master. The aura that they exuded was even more horrifying. And at the place where Feng Yuan was standing, a small flower bud suddenly appeared. It was a blood-colored flower bud. Inside the flower bud, there seemed to be a heart that was moving up and down. Streaks of blood-colored aura were injected into the small blood-colored flower bud. This blood-colored flower bud was the Saint Realm flower that Feng Wuan wanted to obtain. It was formed by gathering the blood essence and power of a group of martial artists. Once it bloomed and was taken, below the Saint Realm, one would immediately break through to the Saint Realm. And above the Saint Realm, one would immediately break through to beyond the Saint Realm. This blood-colored flower was extremely rare and was not something that could be found in the Sky Spill continent. It was also extremely precious and rare in the outer realms. The green smoke also obtained a blood phantom vine by chance. Before, he was reluctant to take it out for Feng Wuan to use. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong breaking Feng Wuan's luck-seizing technique, causing a large amount of Feng Wuan's strength to be absorbed by Ma Chenyi, it would be difficult for him to break through in the future, and his talent and strength would also be greatly damaged. He would never let Feng Wuan use it. Now, the blood phantom vine had absorbed a large amount of death energy and blood essence, and had begun to bloom. At the same time, the power of the vines around it grew stronger and stronger. After all, the blood-colored flower needed blood essence and death energy to nourish it. The bigger it was, the more powerful the vines around it were absorbing. Seeing the blood-red flower bud appear, Feng Wuan's face lit up with joy. Then, he looked at Luo Qingtong and the others with a sneer on his face. "Evil Dr. Ghost Eye, I admit that your luck has always been very good. Your strength has suddenly increased so much. I'm afraid that you have obtained a great opportunity in this Saint King's tomb, right?" Speaking of this, the jealousy in Feng Wuan's eyes seemed to be about to be quenched with poison. All of these things should have been hers. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong interfering and scheming against her, the opportunities in this Saint King's tomb might not have been hers. And, what did she do? Why could she obtain the favor of Yi Qianxian and Yu Sihuang at the same time? She was also a doctor, and her medical skills were not inferior to evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Chapter 1524. Even Yu Sihuang, the king of the southern region, was by her side, running around and protecting her in every possible way. Knowing that the consequence of refusing her request may be death, but she was not even willing to show any signs of submission. What's more, she didn't even hesitate, she didn't even have the thought of betraying Luo Qingtong. Why was the other party so lucky? Feng Wuan pinched her palm fiercely, looking at Luo Qingtong with resentment in her eyes. She looked at Luo Qingtong coldly, then sneered and said, "But even if you have great luck, so what? In this Saint King's tomb, I am the real ruler and king. So what if Luo Qingtong could cut the previous vines?" That was just a new batch of vines that she had spawned. It was completely different from the main blood demon vines that were now surrounding her. Not only that, in this Saint King's tomb, as long as there was enough death energy and blood essence, she could continue to improve the strength of these main blood demon vines. What could Luo Qingtong use to compare with her? Her opportunity to improve was limited. But these blood demon vines in her hands were completely different. Feng Wuan thought so, and her confidence increased in an instant. She looked at Luo Qingtong, and the sneer on her lips was even more obvious. So what if the other party had a great opportunity, and how fast her strength improved? She still had to die here. And she would never let her die so easily. "Evil Dr. Gui Tong, take this." As Feng Wuan's voice sounded, the blood-colored giant vines that were constantly surrounding her instantly attacked Luo Qingtong and Yu Sihuang like dragons. Except for the two of them, the others were not in Feng Wuan's eyes. As long as except for Luo Qingtong and Yu Sihuang, the rest of the people would die sooner or later. Feng Wuan's eyes were cold, and at the same time, she ordered the Ouyang family and other family forces to follow suit. She must let Luo Qingtong and Yu Sihuang die without a burial place. Feng Wuan set aside a group of people to deal with Su Yu and the others, lest these people were eager to protect their master and ruin her plan to kill evil Dr. Gui Tong. This person had many schemes and thoughts, who knew what she would think of to escape. After a series of face slaps, Feng Wuan no longer dared to have any thoughts of underestimating Luo Qingtong. She surrounded Su Yu and the others to prevent them from coming to make trouble and create an opportunity for Luo Qingtong to escape. At the same time, it was to prevent Luo Qingtong's life. She had no way to escape. These people had risked their lives for her, disregarding their own lives. She didn't believe that Luo Qingtong would be able to leave these people to escape. If that was really the case, the other party wouldn't be the evil Dr. Gui Tong who was known as protective. Feng Wuan's eyes were dark and ruthless. As for the Ouyang family head and those powerhouses, when she called out Luo Qingtong's name, they were already looking at Luo Qingtong in horror. This Yi Jiu was actually the evil Dr. Gui Tong? That Blackfield's genius alchemist, Ming Zun's lover? They looked at Luo Qingtong in horror. As for the latter, when Feng Wuan called out her identity, she didn't hide it anymore. Her aura and elegance were on full display. Chapter 1525. She clearly had a delicate and frail body, but under her imposing aura, she exuded a completely different demonic and domineering aura. The smile on her lips was as cold as ice. She was dressed in black and stood in the air with Yu Sihuang. She wasn't inferior in the slightest. Looking at Luo Qingtong, no one had any more questions. With such a magnificent and imposing aura, as well as being so outstanding and young, besides the rumored dark revered of the Black Field, evil Dr. Ghost Eye, who else could it be? No wonder they couldn't find out Yi Jiu's identity and origin. It turned out that the other party's identity was so terrifying. Evil Dr. Ghost Eye, the person that dark revered of the Black Field held in the palm of his hand. Everyone's complexion changed as they looked at Luo Qingtong with unspeakable horror. The other party was actually evil Dr. Ghost Eye. This enmity was too great. No matter what, they couldn't let the other party leave the Saint King's tomb alive. Otherwise, all of them who had participated in the killing of Luo Qingtong would die. Dark revered of the Black Field would never let them go. As everyone thought this, they instantly quivered and no longer dared to hesitate. They immediately split into two groups and surrounded Luo Qingtong, Su Yu, and the others. Su Yu and the others were only restraining them. As for Luo Qingtong and Yu Sihuang, they were completely killing them. Among them, the Ouyang family was the most active. They had already made a big mistake. Even if they made another mistake, they would continue walking down this path. As they rushed towards Luo Qingtong and Yu Sihuang, those blood-red vines had already dragged their huge bodies through the air. They were like dragons and pythons as they rushed towards Luo Qingtong and Yu Sihuang. Tong Tong, be careful. These vines are very strong. Moreover, they can come back from the dead. Yu Sihuang's eyes were cold. Luo Qingtong's identity had already been exposed by Feng Wuan. He didn't need to hide it anymore. It was just that these vines were really troublesome. Their strength continued to rise, and they were extremely powerful. Moreover, they could even come back from the dead. This point gave Yu Sihuang the biggest headache. When he was trapped in the ball of vines, it was because of this that he was injured. And with Luo Qingtong's strength, he didn't know if she could handle it. Yu Sihuang also discovered that Luo Qingtong's strength had increased. The girl was resourceful and had many tricks up her sleeves. She might have a way to deal with these vines. However, Yu Sihuang did not have much hope. After all, in front of absolute strength, ordinary methods would not have much effect. Forget it. Back then, she had saved his life. This time, he would repay her with his life. Who asked him to like her and owe her? Yu Sihuang thought, his heart was already prepared. If there was nothing he could do, then even if he had to risk his life, he would tear apart the space here and send Luo Qingtong out. The man's pair of bewitching eyes were full of seriousness. He unconsciously blocked in front of Luo Qingtong. Looking at his figure blocking in front of her, Luo Qingtong's lips slightly hooked up. Alright, your hand is injured, don't try to show off. Did he really think that she couldn't see? Luo Qingtong glanced at Yu Sihuang. She raised her hand and pulled him behind her. After that, she raised her eyes to look at the blood-red vines and the people from the Ouyang family. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she raised her hand and waved it. Chapter 1526. Along with Luo Qingtong's voice, a small pink figure leaped onto her shoulder. Ha! It's finally my turn to show off my invincible might. Little Pig stood on Luo Qingtong's shoulder with a smug look on his face as he jumped up and down with his 4 little hooves. During this period of time, he had been sullen to death. As Luo Qingtong's natal contracted beast, he couldn't even help her when she was in danger several times. This was simply a disgrace to his reputation as the ancient divine pig. But now, it was finally able to show off its skills. Humph! How dare a puny demonic plant show off in front of your grandpa pig? If it weren't for the fact that I was sealed, would have blown all of you to death with a single breath. Little Pig snorted coldly as he looked at the ferocious blood-colored vines that resembled giant pythons rushing toward him. Then, he dashed toward the blood-colored vines. Boom! As he dashed toward the vines, an incomparably dazzling light suddenly burst out from his body. In an instant, his body was enveloped by the light. The ball of light floated in mid-air. At the same time, a deep purple hexagram suddenly appeared on Luo Qingtong's forehead. Buzz! As soon as the 6-pointed star pattern appeared, it began to spin rapidly. In the air, there seemed to be the sound of thunder and dragon roars. In the blink of an eye, it was as if a phoenix was crying. Then, it was as if an auspicious bird was crying and a giant beast was roaring. The voices echoed faintly in the air. It was as if thousands of demonic beasts were roaring at the same time from all directions, from the endless void of time and space, from the primordial times. The exit of the main hall shook violently. Countless amounts of spiritual chi of heaven and earth surged around the crowd like boiling water, rioting and surging. It was as if they were trembling because of the imminent arrival of a terrifying aura and existence. Amidst the boiling spiritual energy, the ball of light around Little Pig suddenly exploded. Countless rays of light shot out and almost covered the entire main hall at the exit. Then, in the midst of this incomparably dazzling light, a shrill roar that seemed to have transcended the primordial times rang out. An incomparably huge claw suddenly stretched out from the ball of light. The tip of the claw lightly hooked. With a boom, the blood-colored vines that were darting around like dragons and snakes, emitting a terrifying aura like primordial beasts, were torn to shreds by the gentle movement of the claw. The terrifying power that seemed to have come from the primordial times and the boundless lands caused those vines to squirm on the ground after being torn into pieces. They were unable to gather back together for a long time. At the instant Little Pig made his move, a group of figures stopped not far away from the entrance of Wildland City. What's going on? The young man in the lead suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of the Saint King's tomb. Was it his imagination? Why did he feel as if he had sensed an extremely terrifying force that could tear this entire continent into pieces in an instant? The young man was horrified. At this moment, several voices came from behind him. Chapter 1527. Behind the young man was a group of young men and women who wore the same clothes as him. They should be from the same sect. It's nothing. Let's continue. The young man regained his composure and shook his head with a frown. He must have sensed wrongly. How could there be such a terrifying power here? It had to be known that even the legendary venerable realm powerhouses might not be able to tear apart a continent. This was the mortal land of the Sky Spill continent. Compared to the hidden world, the difference in strength was like the difference between heaven and earth. How could such a power appear here? With that thought in mind, he stopped thinking about it and continued to lead the people behind him in the direction of Wild City. Saint Monarch's tomb. They watched as the giant claw that seemed to have descended from the heavens smashed all the blood-colored vines that were rushing towards them into smithereens. Everyone, including Hu Yennyang and the others, were shocked. They looked at the little pig that had returned to its pig form and fell into Luo Qingtong's arms. They never thought that it would be so powerful. Hu Yennyang and the others had never seen the little pig fight before. They thought that it was only a small pet raised by Luo Qingtong. They were just worried that Luo Qingtong would call it out. They never thought that it would be so powerful. Those blood-red vines that emitted a terrifying aura were like giant pythons and dragons. Under its claws, they were like weeds, not even worth mentioning. Yu Sihuang also looked at this scene with surprise. Then, he suddenly chuckled. This woman had saved him once again. It seemed that he owed her for the rest of his life. While Hu Yennyang and the others were surprised and happy in their hearts, Feng Yuan's side was shocked beyond words and was on the verge of collapse. How is this possible? Feng Yuan looked at the blood-red vines that were as thick as dragons bursting apart in front of her. He couldn't believe his eyes. She came here full of killing intent and confidence. She thought that she would be able to kill Luo Qingtong and Yu Sihuang, but she didn't expect that she would be ruthlessly slapped in the face. He watched as the vines exploded in front of him, breaking apart and scattering like rain. The proud and cold smile on Feng Yuan's face immediately froze. Even the curvature of his lips seemed to have been frozen in place. This is impossible. She screamed shrilly. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's figure flashed. Feng Yuan, I'll return all the words you said just now to you. Don't even think about leaving this tomb. As Luo Qingtong's voice rang out, the girl raised her long sword with a boom. In the blink of an eye, his entire body was like a black bolt of lightning, piercing through the air above the exit hall, violently rushing towards Feng Yuan. It was time for the latter to pay the price for what she had just done. Luo Qingtong would never allow the opponent to attack without retaliating. Boom! The girl's figure flew. In an instant, she was like a swimming dragon, moving like a rabbit as she violently attacked Feng Wuan. The latter was standing on the thickest main vine. After the attack just now, only this main vine was left in good condition in the exit hall. The other blood-red demonic vines were all shattered by Little Pig's slap. Chapter 1528. She didn't have time to be entangled and resentful of her failure just now. She raised her hand and tried to summon those broken blood-colored vines again. However, those blood-colored vines wriggled for a long time, but they couldn't fuse at all. Not for anything else, but at their wounds, there was an extremely powerful and overbearing power that seemed to be derived from ancient times, covering them. It made the death aura in those vines unable to spread at all. This was the power left behind by Little Pig's attack. His true body was incomparably powerful. Even if it was sealed and could only use a little power, the essence of this power would not change. Under such circumstances, the death aura in these vines had no way to break through the blockade of those forces. Naturally, there was no way to resurrect. Boom boom boom. With no other choice, Feng Wuan could only give up on gathering those powerful blood-colored demonic vines and summon new blood-colored demonic vines. But in the attack just now, she only let the people of the Ouyang family and those forces restrain Su Yu and the others. There were no casualties at all. The summoned vines were only 2 or 3, and they were cut off by Luo Qingtong in an instant. The life and death yin-yang sword in the latter's hand was the nemesis of those vines' death aura. When Luo Qingtong slashed with her sword, those vines had no chance to resurrect at all and withered in an instant. In just a moment, Luo Qingtong arrived in front of Feng Wuan. She waved the long sword in her hand and slashed at Feng Wuan. Her attack was ruthless and indomitable. Obviously, she wasn't going to give Feng Wuan any chance to survive and escape. Luo Qingtong never liked to leave any future troubles. Boom! As Luo Qingtong slashed with her sword, the green smoke in Feng Wuan's body was alarmed. It had just taken control of Feng Wuan's body and had already consumed a lot of power. It was now sleeping and recuperating. However, he did not expect to be alarmed by Feng Wuan's crisis. When the eye of the array saw Luo Qingtong's sword slashing down, its consciousness suddenly froze. Then, with a boom, it rushed up and took control of Feng Wuan's body in an instant. With a bang, he raised his hand and blocked Luo Qingtong's attack with his own strength. Surprisingly, Yang Kai found that the other party's attack contained the aura of a Saint King. Immediately, the green smoke's expression froze. Go! The Saint King realm aura in Luo Qingtong's body was extremely powerful, and although she couldn't fully exert it, he had consumed too much of his strength before and couldn't fully resist it. If this continued, Feng Wuan would definitely die. With that thought in mind, he immediately controlled Feng Wuan's body to leave. Seeing that Feng Wuan was about to leave, Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes fiercely. She clenched the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood in her hand and prepared her strongest attack. Feng Wuan, this disaster, couldn't be easily let go. However, just as the green smoke controlled Feng Wuan's body to leave, the consciousness of Feng Wuan, who had already recovered, suddenly went crazy. No! I won't go. Feng Wuan's heart was filled with extreme hatred. She glared at Luo Qingtong in front of her with a ruthless gaze. The young man held a sword in front of her. Black clothes and black hair, he was unbridled and charming, and domineering. Feng Wuan looked at Luo Qingtong like this, and her eyes were about to be quenched with poison. Chapter 1529. In order to return with glory and regain what she had before, she had planned and schemed for so long, all for today. How could she leave? After she left, was she going to hand over all the fruits of her hard work to evil Dr. Ghost Eye? No. As Feng Luan's voice sounded, the wisp of green smoke scolded her in her mind, "Shut up. Where there's life, there's hope. You're no match for her now. You must avoid her." Qingyan's words were meant to persuade Feng Luan. Luo Qingtong obviously had a special encounter in the Saint King's tomb. It was unwise for Feng Luan to confront her head-on. It was better to leave first and think of a way later. However, his words poked at Feng Luan's most sensitive point. She had always been superior and did not think that Luo Qingtong could compare to her. She could find many excuses for herself when she lost to Luo Qingtong in the past. But this time, Qingyan said that she was inferior to Luo Qingtong. All the pent-up anger and resentment in her heart exploded. "No. I'll never leave. I still have one last trump card." As Feng Yuan spoke, there was a boom. Her intense resentment and obsession actually allowed her consciousness to suppress the green smoke and snatch back control of her body from the other party's hands. "Evil Dr. Gui Tong, I won't lose to you. Never." As Feng Yuan roared in her heart, her voice was incomparably cold and contained a deep killing intent that resounded in the hall. "Explode." As Feng Yuan's voice sounded, in an instant, in the direction of the Ouyang clan, including the Ouyang clan master and the other experts of the Ouyang clan, in an instant, boom. 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 A series of violent explosions rang out. In an instant, the entire exit hall was filled with an extremely strong smell of blood. Before the Ouyang family head and all the other members of the Ouyang family could react, their bodies began to swell violently. In an instant, they were like balloons that had been blown over their heads. They exploded with a boom. The Ouyang clan master and the other experts were more powerful and could withstand the explosion for a longer time. His eyes bulged as he looked in the direction of Feng Yuan. His eyes were full of resentment. "You! Bitch! You!" He pointed at Feng Yuan with a trembling finger. Naturally, he knew that such an incident in his clan was related to the latter. It was like asking a tiger for its skin. The Ouyang clan master's eyes were full of regret. If he had known that Feng Yuan was so ruthless, he would have done something to the people in his family. He would never have agreed to cooperate with the other party. So much so that he was tricked by the other party. The Ouyang family head's eyes were filled with hatred and resentment, but Feng Yuan's eyes were cold. Who asked the people of the Ouyang family to be so stupid? Without any means, how could she cooperate with them? Naturally, she had to ensure that she could control them. Originally, Feng Yuan had decided to use the form of cooperation to let the Ouyang clan arrange things for her. Once the dust had settled, she would use her own tricks to threaten the Ouyang family to pledge their allegiance to her. In this way, everything that the Ouyang clan obtained would belong to her. She would also become the true ruler of the far west wilderness. But all of this was ruined by the evil Dr. Gui Tong. "Evil Dr. Gui Tong, you deserve to die." Feng Yuan looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong with resentment and shook her hand fiercely. Chapter 1530. As Feng Yuan's voice sounded, in an instant, the whole ground trembled violently. Under Feng Yuan's voice, the main vine standing under Feng Yuan's feet rose up in an instant like a dragon coming out of its cave. Amidst the violent tremors, which seemed to be capable of collapsing the entire exit hall, the aura of the incomparably huge main vine continued to soar. The originally incomparably thick body, at this moment, expanded horizontally countless times again. It rose from the ground fiercely, almost breaking through the dome of the exit hall. The long body rolled up and down in the space of this exit hall, crawling like a wild behemoth. Countless blood chi and death chi all rushed towards it at this moment. In the exit hall, the people of the family forces had long been stunned by this sudden scene. They never thought that Feng Yuan would suddenly attack the people of the Ouyang family. Isn't the other party a member of the Ouyang family? Just as everyone was thinking about this, they suddenly saw a group of figures pouncing towards them. It was none other than the remnants of the blood demon vines that were constantly creeping on the ground after being crushed by Little Pig's paw, but there was no way to reunite. At this moment, these remnants of the vines were all twisting their bodies, rushing towards them like snake shadows. The nearest group of people was caught off guard and was hit by the remnants of the blood demon vines. In an instant, screams rang out one after another. The voices of the people of the family forces were miserable, and the blood chi and power of their bodies were constantly absorbed by the remnants of the vines that rushed up. Streams of blood energy and death energy spread out along with their screams. In just an instant, the people of the family forces were sucked into dry corpses. At the same time, the remains of the vines also withered in an instant. The power of the blood essence that was released from their bodies was instantly absorbed by the main vine. The power aura around the latter became more and more terrifying. Looking at this scene, the faces of all the people from the various families and forces changed. It turned out that Feng Wuan's target was not only the people of the Ouyang family, but also all of them. The latter couldn't wait to kill all of them present to provide nourishment for the huge main vine's growth. Everyone thought so, and suddenly there was an indescribable panic and fear in their hearts. The scene was filled with screams, and it was extremely chaotic. Su Yu and the others were also attacked by these vines, but everyone from the heavenly diabolism held a spirit chi gun in their hands. Under the precise control and aim, the broken branches and vines that rushed over were all knocked down under the attack of Su Yu and the others. Although they couldn't destroy them, the vines couldn't get close to them. Family Hu and the people of the southern mountain range were protected in the middle and were unharmed. Seeing this scene, the people from the various families felt a wave of regret in their hearts. If they knew the end result would be like this, they would never have turned against Su Yu and the others under Feng Wuan's threat. Now, the path of survival that they thought they had found was actually a path to death. On the contrary, Family Hu and the people of the southern mountain range were living well. Chapter 1531. And on the other side, Feng Wuan stepped on the main vine that was like an ancient and savage dragon, rushing towards Luo Qingtong. This time, she would definitely kill her opponent. Tong tong. Seeing this scene, Yu Sihuang's eyes instantly shrunk. At the same time, rumble rumble rumble. Outer space. In a remote and desolate continent that was an unknown distance away from the Sky Spill continent. Countless bolts of lightning flashed and thunder roared. They were like blood-red saber lights that fiercely cleaved through the skies of this desolate continent. At the very center of the continent, a silver figure was faintly discernible as it floated amidst a storm of lightning and thunder. Pang pang pang. Terrifying bolts of lightning came crashing down from the sky like a torrential downpour. It was like the Milky Way was falling from the heavens, shattering the vast skies. And not too far away from this continent, Beiqing and Feather Wind were anxiously looking at this desolate continent. This storm of lightning has already continued for a full 7 days and 7 nights. Damn it! Does the heavenly Tao want Master to die so badly? Beiqing gripped her fists, looking at the most concentrated point of the desolate continent in front of her. That was where Yi Qianxian was. After the two of them brought Yi Qianxian here in the form of a young fox, they were able to withstand the barrage of thunder and lightning at the start. But towards the end, they were completely unable to do so and were forced out. At this time, Yi Qianxian was the only one resisting the endless barrage of thunder. This level of lightning attack, if it wasn't Yi Qianren who was inside, but any other expert in this star field, they would have been blasted to pieces by this incomparably dense thunder and lightning. The two of them were filled with worry and worry. The heavenly Tao clearly didn't want their master to succeed in extending his life. The further the thunder and lightning went, the fiercer the attack became. A casual attack like this was enough to pierce through a low-level continent like the Sky Spill continent. Luckily, they had brought their master away from the Sky Spill continent in time. Otherwise, if their master couldn't display his strength, there would be no way for him to resist this barrage of thunder and lightning. As the two of them were thinking this, there was a sudden hum. The barrage of thunder and lightning in front of them suddenly stopped. Did it work? The two of them were pleasantly surprised. However, before they could smile, in that instant, bang! An extremely terrifying aura filled the air. They looked at the dense barrage of thunder and lightning in front of them and opened a path. Immediately thereafter, an extremely thick pillar of purplish-black lightning came crashing down from the heavens, threatening to encompass the entirety of the abandoned continent up ahead. At the very center of this pillar of thunder, a flickering white dot flashed. An incomparably frightening aura that seemed capable of destroying the entire region was emitted from it. World-extinguishing God thunder. Seeing this incomparably powerful and terrifying pillar of thunder come crashing down, Bei Qing and Wind Feather felt their hearts tighten. Master! Just as the two of them cried out in alarm, with a loud bang, countless bolts of thunder and lightning wrapped around a single point. A ball of silver light suddenly burst open. Chapter 1532. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Yi Qianqian's eyes were ice cold as he looked at the heavenly punishment that came crashing down from the heavens. There wasn't the slightest ripple of emotion on his handsome face. He lifted his hand and blasted out an attack. Heaven-conquering art, annihilation. As the man's cold voice resounded through the skies, a blood-red light flashed from the man's sleeves. With a bang, an incomparably stunning saber light shot out from the man's fluttering silver sleeves. In an instant, it cut through the wilderness and extinguished all light. Pang! That terrifying pillar of lightning that could almost turn the abandoned continent beneath Yi Qianxian into dust was instantly annihilated by Yi Qianxian's move. The entire world seemed to wail and tremble under this attack. The incomparably thick pillar of lightning shattered with a loud bang. In the endless void, there seemed to be something that was hatefully flying away. Yi Qianxian's figure stood between the heavens and earth. His eyes seemed to contain countless saber lights and blood swords. He coldly stared at the void, as if he wanted to peer into the depths of the endless void. Master! Bei Qing and Feng Yu rushed to Yi Qianxian's side, their faces filled with joy and surprise. Master, did you succeed in extending your life? Yi Qianxian withdrew his gaze. He stood in the starry sky with his hands clasped behind his back, sensing the situation within his body. He had indeed succeeded in extending his life. The strength of his meridians had increased by a great deal. It was enough for him to support himself for another 3 years. Unfortunately, even if he had absorbed all the power of the Heavenly Fox's blood essence, it was only enough for him to send out an attack that was comparable to his peak state. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to just shatter the world-extinguishing thunder. Yi Qianxian's eyes were cold. He flicked his sleeves and said, "Let's go." He had left the Sky Spill continent for so long. It was time to return. I wonder how that woman is doing in the far west wilderness. Thinking of the enemies Luo Qingtong had provoked in the far west wilderness, Yi Qianxian slightly frowned. He didn't know why, but he had an uneasy feeling. He hoped that nothing would happen to that woman. As Yi Qianxian and the others disappeared, the surrounding heaven and earth spirit qi began to calm down. At this moment, a group of figures suddenly rushed in from the front. I clearly sensed an extremely powerful and terrifying aura here just now. How come it's gone now? The strength of this group of people was extremely powerful. With their arrival, the surrounding heaven and earth spirit qi started to boil again. One of them, a middle-aged man who looked to be about 40 years old, glanced at the scene in front of him. He immediately frowned and asked doubtfully. "Maybe I sensed wrongly?" Someone beside him said. "Impossible." The middle-aged man said, "It's fine if I was the only one who sensed it wrong, but you guys sensed it too." This was definitely the first time a group of people had sensed wrongly. The middle-aged man's expression was grave. At this moment, a voice sounded out from behind him. "Whether or not we sensed wrongly, we'll know once we take a look." As he spoke, a young girl wearing a jade-green robe walked out from behind him. Her beautiful eyes swept over the scene in front of her. The young girl looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. Her eyebrows were thin, and her lips were pink. Her figure was slender and elegant, and her face carried a bit of beauty and nobility. As she walked out from behind, the group of people quickly bowed. Chapter 1533. The girl nodded and took out a mirror that seemed to be carved out of ice. The mirror was inlaid with extremely complicated and gorgeous patterns. The aura it exuded was very powerful. It was obviously not an ordinary item. The girl raised her hand and shone the mirror at the scene in front of her. In the blink of an eye, many images were revealed within it. Yi Qianming, Bei Qing, and Feng Yu's figures were revealed. The girl's eyes lit up when she saw Yi Qianming's face. At this moment, the ice mirror in her hand shattered with a bang. The scene of Yi Qianming resisting the divine thunder of annihilation was too powerful. The mirror could not show it at all. The power within had exceeded the limit of what it could bear. The girl was caught off guard and was pushed back by the power of the ice mirror. Eldest Miss. A group of strong cultivators rushed forward to support her, but she waved her hand and stopped them. "I'm fine." The girl's eyes were burning as she looked at the place where the ice mirror had shattered. The ice mirror was a gift from her father on her 16th birthday. It was definitely not an ordinary item. Now, it had shattered when she peeked at the scene in front of her. The man in the scene in front of her was definitely unfathomable. The extremely powerful and terrifying power that they had sensed just now might have been caused by him. The girl's eyes lit up as she thought about it. She looked at the shattered mirror in front of her and ordered, "Check the background of that man. Check over there." As she spoke, she pointed in the direction where Yi Qianming and the others had left. "Yes." A group of strong cultivators hurriedly responded. They followed the girl and naturally knew how precious and powerful the ice mirror in her hand was. It shattered after just one look. The strength of the man revealed by the ice mirror was definitely beyond their imagination. If they could find such a person, they would naturally try their best to rope him in. But the eldest miss seemed to have other thoughts about him. This was a little troublesome. The eldest miss had an engagement with the first miss. Everyone had a subtle look in their eyes as they thought about it, but they did not say anything. After all, this was the eldest miss's personal matter. What's more, that man's strength was so powerful that even if the young miss fell in love with him, it wouldn't be impossible. It's just that. I'm afraid it won't be easy to explain to them. And at the Sky Spill continent, Saint King Tomb. Luo Qingtong looked at the scene of Feng Wuan controlling the main vine and suddenly narrowed her eyes. The attack she had been brewing in her hand suddenly blasted out. Heaven-conquering art. As the tyrannical sword light swept out, with a bang, the huge vine controlled by Feng Wuan let out a sharp shriek, as it retreated a few dozen meters. However, its body didn't suffer too much damage. The blood energy and death energy it absorbed were too powerful. It wasn't just the blood energy and death energy of the Ouyang family, but also the power of the wriggling bloody remains. The strength of the main vine of the blood-colored demonic vine had been raised to an extremely terrifying level. Under such circumstances, even if Luo Qingtong absorbed the power of the Saint King's soul in the heart of the thousand-year soul-guiding tree, it wouldn't pose any hindrance. Chapter 1534. Luo Qingtong looked at this scene and slightly narrowed her eyes. At this moment, Yu Sihuang's figure appeared beside her. "Let's go, Tong Tong, I'll send you out." He stretched out his hand towards Luo Qingtong. Yu Sihuang naturally has a life-saving secret method to leave this place. However, that secret method can only be used once in a short period of time and can only send one person out at a time. After sending off Luo Qingtong, Yu Sihuang himself has no way to leave. However, he is not prepared to let Luo Qingtong know about this. No need. Looking at Yu Sihuang's outstretched hand, Luo Qingtong frowned. Although she doesn't know what the other party wants to do, but if Yu Sihuang really has a way to leave this place easily, she is afraid that he would have used it long ago. Dragging it out until now, she is afraid that the consumption of that method is not small, and the damage to Yu Sihuang is also very big. Most importantly, if she leaves, what will happen to Su Yu and the others? Will they all die here? She brought them in, so she naturally has to bring them all out. No one can think of snatching them from her hands. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. She avoided Yu Sihuang's hand and raised her hand to attack several times, attacking the main vine in front of her. Boom boom boom. That main vine was blasted back violently. Feng Luan was so angry that her face turned white. She doesn't believe that Luo Qingtong can continuously attack like this. The opponent's strength must be limited. No matter how heaven-defying the opportunity in this Saint King's tomb is, it is impossible to raise her strength to such a powerful level in such a short period of time. She must have used some tricks. She is waiting to see when she will reveal her true colors. At that time, she will definitely die without a burial place. And Luo Qingtong, after blasting out those few attacks, suddenly leaped and appeared beside Su Yu and the others. "Do you want to live?" She raised her hand and attacked, shattering the remains of the blood-red vines that were wriggling towards the people from the various families and forces. The latter and the others were desperately resisting the attacks of the vines. When they saw Luo Qingtong's actions and heard her question, they were stunned. Soon, someone realized what was going on. Yes. We want to live. How could these people not want to live? If it wasn't for the fact that they wanted to survive, they wouldn't have been forced by Feng Luan to swear allegiance to the Ouyang family. As a result, the Ouyang clan's people had all died without a complete corpse. These people had become nutrients for the blood-colored vines. They were truly helpless. Seeing that Luo Qingtong seemed to have the intention to save them, the group hurriedly responded. "All right." Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes coldly at them. "Swear your loyalty to me, and I will save you." The blood-red light in her eyes flickered violently. If someone could see the depths of Luo Qingtong's eyes at this moment, they would be shocked to discover that the entire exit hall and even the three-dimensional image of the Saint King's tomb was presented in Luo Qingtong's eyes, constantly rotating and evolving. All right. The people from the various families and forces did not hesitate to delay. They had already sold themselves and the others to the Ouyang family once before. So what if they sold themselves and the others to Luo Qingtong again? As for whether the young man was lying to them, they were about to lose their lives. Who would care about that? Moreover, even if the other party was lying to them, it was meaningless. Chapter 1535. It was with this thought in mind that the people from the various families and forces answered quickly. At this time, they were very glad that they had pledged their loyalty to the Ouyang family. Now that the Ouyang family's people were all dead, they could be considered free. Otherwise, if they had sold to Feng Luan, they would have ended up worse than the Ouyang family's people. They would have already become fertilizer. The group of people hurriedly pledged their loyalty. At this time, Yu Sihuang also rushed to Luo Qingtong's side. "Tong Tong, Yu Sihuang, do me a favor." Luo Qingtong looked at him. "Help me block Feng Luan for 300 breaths of time." Only Yu Sihuang alone could possibly block the main vine's attack. Luo Qingtong needed time. 300 breaths? Yu Sihuang looked deeply at Luo Qingtong, then nodded. Okay. He didn't ask anything, nor did he say anything, he simply turned around and left. 300 breaths of time, as long as he didn't die, he wouldn't miss a single breath of time. Looking at Yu Sihuang's figure leaving, Luo Qingtong looked at the group of people who had already pledged their loyalty to Su Yu and the others. Next, you all listen to my orders, boom. Yu Sihuang's figure rushed towards the blood-colored vine that was once again exploding towards this side. On top of the vine, Feng Luan looked at the situation where Luo Qingtong turned around and returned to Su Yu and the others. Inexplicably, he had a bad premonition in his heart. Although he felt that Luo Qingtong was bound to be doomed this time. After all, this vine had been stimulated to the extreme by her. Unless the Saint King powerhouse in this Saint King's tomb came back from the dead, no one here would be its opponent. Under such circumstances, Luo Qingtong and the others were bound to die. But Feng Luan had suffered too much in the hands of Luo Qingtong before. He didn't dare to lower his guard against the other party. Therefore, even if he didn't think that Luo Qingtong had any chance to turn the tables, after seeing Luo Qingtong's strange actions, he still rushed over regardless of everything. Get lost. Seeing Yu Sihuang rushing towards him, Feng Luan's eyes flashed fiercely. He directly controlled the blood-colored vine under his feet and fiercely whipped towards Yu Sihuang's direction. Boom! That tyrannical and terrifying power directly shook the space in mid-air, creating ripples that were several feet wide. Especially the surrounding spiritual qi, it was like a huge wave that violently surged up layer by layer. Then, along with the huge body of the blood-colored vine, it violently attacked towards Yu Sihuang. Looking at the violent power rushing towards him, Yu Sihuang's face turned gloomy. 300 breaths of time. He abruptly raised his hand, and in an instant, a few golden needles with a cold gleam appeared between his 5 fingers. He pierced them into the Baihui acupoint on the top of his head. Golden Needle Empowerment. As the golden needles pierced into his body, the aura in his body instantly soared and he rushed towards the blood-colored vine's attack. Boom boom boom. A man and a vine quickly clashed together. On the other side, Luo Qingtong's arrangement was almost complete. Stand still. Everyone, don't move a single step. Chapter 1536. Beneath their feet, there were winding lines. Luo Qingtong's figure shuttled between the crowd. A huge inscription pattern that almost enveloped everyone slowly took shape. Wang. As the inscription pattern became more and more perfect, the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the air seemed to have sensed something and faintly began to boil and jump. Feeling this movement, Feng Luan, who was entangled with Yu Sihuang, suddenly raised his head and looked towards Luo Qingtong's direction. His eyes instantly congealed. Damn it! That evil Dr. Gui Tong really had some tricks up his sleeve. Looking at the huge inscription pattern on the ground, Feng Luan fiercely clenched his teeth and no longer cared about anything else. Explode! She let out a stern shout. In an instant, Yu Sihuang felt that the aura of the main vine in front of him was not right. In the next second, a violent explosion sound rang out. It was Feng Luan who detonated a part of the main vine's body. The tyrannical and terrifying power that escaped from the main vine caught Yu Sihuang off guard. Boom boom boom. Yu Sihuang's figure was sent flying. At the same time, Feng Luan also controlled the huge main vine and quickly flew towards Luo Qingtong and the others. Evil Dr. Gui Tong, I want you to die. At this moment, Luo Qingtong was only a few lines away from completing the huge inscription pattern. Seeing Feng Luan's figure flying over, Luo Qingtong's brows slightly wrinkled. At this moment, there was a loud boom. An attack suddenly flew out from behind and exploded on the main vine. The impact caused the main vine's figure to suddenly stop in mid-air for a moment. Cough cough. 300 breaths of time, is it enough? Behind the main vine, Yu Huang's figure was barely supporting himself to stand there. The explosion just now had injured him quite badly. At this moment, he was covering his mouth with one hand. Blood was dripping from the gaps between his fingers. His devilishly charming face paled, making his crimson robe seem even redder than blood. Enough. Looking at Yu Huang's current appearance, Luo Qingtong's complexion became heavy to the extreme. She drew the last line and raised her hand to summon the life and death yin-yang sword. Then, she thrust it down. Spirit Summoning Array, rise. Following Luo Qingtong's shout, the entire inscription pattern lit up. Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. Infuse power. As her voice rang out, the people that she had arranged to stand on the nodes of the inscription patterns immediately moved in a hurry. They poured the power that they had already prepared into the line that they were standing on. As the power poured in, the entire inscription pattern started to spin. His speed was getting faster and faster. Boom boom boom. As the inscription pattern started to spin, the entire Saint King's tomb started to tremble. The trembling became more and more intense. Then, with a loud boom, an extremely powerful consciousness suddenly appeared on the huge inscription pattern. The spirit of the Saint King's tomb. Looking at the appearance of the huge spirit of the Saint King's tomb, everyone's eyes widened in an instant. Chapter 1537. At this time, Feng Luan controlled the huge main vine to rush in front of Luo Qingtong and the others. However, the moment when it was blocked by Yu Huang, Luo Qingtong had already completed the inscription lines. Now that she rushed over, what greeted her was the huge spirit of the Holy King's tomb. Under the summoning of Luo Qingtong's Spirit Summoning Array, the consciousness spirit of the glorious underground palace appeared at once. Then, it fiercely collided with her, who was controlling the blood-colored demonic vine. Boom boom boom. The two huge creatures collided. In an instant, the huge blood-colored vine was bombarded into pieces amidst a sharp, ear-piercing sound. After all, this was its home ground, but the spirit of the Holy King's tomb was its home ground. The main vine of the blood-colored demonic vine had absorbed its power before, so it was naturally suppressed by it. Ah! On the blood-colored vine, Feng Luan's beautiful face turned pale. She could feel the main blood-colored vine under her feet shattering. If this continued, the main blood-colored vine would definitely not be able to hold on. At that time, it would be Luo Qingtong's turn to kill her. Thinking so, Feng Luan suddenly couldn't care about anything else. She hurriedly controlled the broken main blood-colored vine to leave. Looking at her preparing to flee, Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. She raised her hand, and in an instant, the life and death sword inserted in the center of the array was held in her hand. This life and death sword had absorbed a lot of power from the spirit of the Holy King's tomb. Now that it was held in Luo Qingtong's palm, it was boiling hot. At the same time, in Luo Qingtong's hand, the heart of the thousand-year soul guiding wood had also absorbed a lot of power from the spirit of the Holy King's tomb. At this moment, the strands of power were overflowing from it. Holding these two things, Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly shot up and swept towards Feng Luan. Take Yu Huang and leave first. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she slashed out with her sword. Heaven-conquering art. In an instant, the entire exit hall seemed to be illuminated by this sword light. Savage Eternity, Heaven Desolation Sword. Boom boom boom. As the sword slashed out, the entire exit hall and the tomb were on the verge of collapse. The power Luo Qingtong was using at this moment came from the spirit of the glorious underground palace of the Sage King's tomb. This kind of power was terrifying. At the same time, it could easily destroy the material of the tomb. Countless pieces of rubble fell down. At the same time, Luo Qingtong's sword light also slashed on the broken main vine of the blood demon vine. Then, the tail of the sword fiercely swept towards Feng Wuan, who was at the top of the vine. Ah! Looking at the sword slashing towards him, Feng Wuan's heart was in a panic. Luo Qingtong's sword light contained the power of the spirit of the Holy King's tomb, and this blood demon vine couldn't resist it at all. Right at this moment, the consciousness of the green smoke suddenly surged out and took over her body. Idiot! The blue smoke was suppressed back into the depths of Feng Wuan's consciousness by the sudden madness before, and only now did it break free. Seeing this scene, he suddenly shouted out, and then fiercely shouted, "Explode!" As his voice sounded, in an instant, the entire main vine of the blood demon vine exploded. The powerful explosive force blocked Luo Qingtong's sword light. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.